Long time no see. Then again, more no see because there's no one who watches me. But I'm just gonna do a video anyway. Um, and it just really occurred to me the other day, and it's just stuff that we already know, but really understanding how much, of course, politicians don't give a shit about us. Corporations don't really give a shit about us, except for one exception, and that is to make money off of the human race. So I believe at this point in time, the only thing that's keeping humans alive is being consumers. And it's a combination of yes, they want us alive longer, but they don't want us to be living well because they want us to be relying on them, the system, giving them money in every way. I do think this translates somehow into transhumanism with the takeover of AI and trying to convert humans into the AI. Of course, you got to go through the transhuman um, thing first. And what makes sense is, well, for me, what I'm going to say about this, and it's just a wild idea. I watched Saratoga Ocean. I really do trust her. I think she's pretty much on the ball when it comes to what the big picture is of what everything is going on right now, and it's the AI takeover and transhumanism. And I think she does a decent job at articulating that and creating the importance of it and the awareness and really how everything is connected to it right now. So I do think that ideally for the AI and for corporations is to have, instead of humans, have AI that act like humans. So we'll act like humans, we're still going to be consumers to them, but because we're plugged into some AI, we're more controllable. So, and it really started dawning on me because there's this idea they're trying to figure out what consciousness really is and how can you transfer your consciousness into an AI robot. And it's like people who think that's conspiracy theory haven't spent a second thinking about what's going on, and they're the type of people that just accept what the mainstream says to them completely. And they're the people that are polarized. They're either a Republican who hates a Democrat or vice versa. So but my wild idea in this idea that they're trying to transfer human consciousness into AI consciousness, if you think about it, we're already this like hybrid of AI. I had surgery once. I have an implant um, in me. I have basically an artificial implant in me. We are attached to the hip, as they would say, with our phones. It's become an accepted thing. We always have our phones. I'm using my phone right now. Um, we use basically a lot of technology. You know, it's not just phones and computers and internet. It's also the stuff that's in us because they also talk about like nanobots and how that can be used in your bloodstream and how that can actually in the future be a way of repairing the body and diagnosing the body immediately of issues. And there's all this stuff, decades that are going to take decades to actually come out. But in a way, we're already halfway there with AI consciousness, um, with just how reliant and how used to we are with using technology. But it's kind of that valuing technology and finding it like a requirement in your life, that how could I live life without this stuff, that makes your consciousness slowly identify with technology. Identification, I think, is a very important thing, which is why with trans people in general right now, you know, it's a big deal for them. So um, identity, though, is a big deal for every person. We have an identity. We need it to not lose sanity. We have to have an understanding of who we are in this 3D world. And I think that by identifying, though, with AI, with technology and then AI technology, and then once they start putting those AI implants and stuff, that's gonna what it can do is transfer your consciousness in that way. Um, I don't know if it's in your lifetime, but if there is a karmic system, if your consciousness, let's say you die and I feel like when you die, your energy is just whichever your energy is, and it will flow into the next physical thing that it identifies with. And so if it starts to identify, if your consciousness starts to identify and wants that experience, that life experience as an AI, then it will. And I think that that's what's going on. It's making us more comfortable um, with all this technology. So I think that's how AI will be, why it's permeating everything, and how the human race will divide into that consciousness. And a lot of the people, the open-minded people, will say what we talk about is separating the wheat from the chaff, or whatever the saying was. How there's basically a timeline split, and the human race is splitting. And I think that's the biggest split of it all, is that the humans are going to become more detested by technology as time, because technology is really gross. It's so pervasive. It's predatory. How, if you think about it, you talk about something, your phone's listening, and then you get all these particular ads based on what you talked about that day. I find that pretty gross. And so that's why things are just going to keep getting worse. The leavening, as we also say, it's going to separate the human race. Who is going to identify with the technology? Who's going to fall in line? That's why a lot of this stuff, like listening to the lockdowns, accepting what you're told, that's what AI is. So these people who are already believing everything that they are told are being programmed, and that is already showing that their consciousness is okay. They're okay with being programmed. And then there's people like me, people like us, who are not okay with being programmed. I spend every day catching my subconsciousness and what is going on in the back of my mind, and is that an original thought, or is that something possibly being pushed on me, programmed? And there's a lot of subliminal programming, especially with news feeds. So, because I think they outlawed like direct subliminal messaging, ads, um, when they would like flicker things and strobe, and you would, in a millisecond, you wouldn't really notice, in the ad, or like in a movie there would be an ad or something like that. But really, what happens when you're scrolling through that news feed? People don't think that their subconsciousness is actually picking it up when it actually is. So I do think that's also why um, it seems like sometimes the phone is not just listening to us, but it's reading our thoughts. And I'm onto it where I think it's not that it's reading our thoughts. Like, let's say I think of something and then I see an ad later. It's very possible that you thought of it because you already saw the ad. It already implanted subliminally to you. So I've caught a few of those and been like, oh wait, no, I saw that before, or whatever. So basically, that's what's happening, is that we are being subliminally programmed, then we're being overtly programmed, and people then are accepting that program. And if you accept that program, you're identifying your consciousness with AI. So that is what I believe is happening in many ways.